Well, welcome back to Walking with the Chosen. I am your host, Shay Keith. Today, I'm going to talk to you all about ChosenCon. What did you miss? I can't wait to tell you all about it. I got to see some behind the scenes for season 4, as well as talked a little bit about season 5 and even season 6. And I can't wait to share all that news with you, in addition to what's coming out next month in December. Are you ready for all the Chosen goodness? Okay, let's get started. So one thing I want to first point out to you is that I am sitting at my home in Lake the Ozarks in Missouri. You can tell behind me that there are lots of trees, everything's changing color. And I was getting frustrated trying to set up my camera to work in my little space inside my condo with a green screen. And I thought, why not just go outside and shoot this video? So for those of you who listen on my audio podcast, first off, thank you for listening. I'm so glad to have you here with me. But I do have a few people that watch on video, and today is going to be a very video intensive episode because I'm going to be sharing clips from the actual ChosenCon. I had my camera with me both days. I shot lots of video clips, and I want to be able to share some of that with you as I tell you about my experience with ChosenCon. I've got my handy dandy iPad right here with all my notes on it. So let's get started, and I'll start going over everything so you know what you missed at ChosenCon. One thing you're probably going to notice is I'm going to refer to people by their character name on The Chosen. I myself don't remember all of their personal actors' names, and I'm sure a lot of you probably don't as well. So I figured it'd be easier if I just refer to them by Thomas and Thaddeus and whoever. So I will tell you all about the characters and some experiences I had with them, and just kind of tell you overall what the experience was like with the ChosenCon. So first off, let me begin with, it was held in Dallas, and everything was held in the hotel where I stayed at, the Hilton Anatolia, I believe was the name of it. And I had a room there in the building. So the first night I was there was Friday night, and I got really excited because I thought there was some party going on for ChosenCon. They did do an early registration, and they only notified us that, I think it was on Friday, that day, that they're doing early registration, and my flight wasn't going to get in until about 20 minutes before the registration was over. And then everything got delayed, so I didn't even get to be there on time when they actually did the early registration. The downside to that was they opened the store, and the Hebrew shirts, the ones that say loaves and fishes in Hebrew language, were sold out that night, along with a couple other shirts. Luckily for us, they did open up the store online so that we could order the shirts for ourselves, but they really wanted to make that accessible only to the people who were attending ChosenCon. I met Bob, who is in charge of all the merchandise. He happened to come over to my table when I was eating my dinner that night, and he was just asking what I was doing and how I was, and he was telling me that he ran the merch, and he said, I brought 1,200 of those shirts. He goes, I didn't expect them to all sell out tonight. Apparently, people were going up, and they wouldn't just buy a shirt for themselves, they would buy several for their friends and family back home. So yes, they ran out of things very quickly, but they still had many things in stock, so that was really cool. I picked up one shirt that I liked, which says on the front, it has a picture of Peter, and on the sleeve it has The Chosen, and then it says, don't let me go, and I really relate to that. I really love that. There was another one that had Matthew, but I can't think of what the expression was on those. And those may be available in the Chosen store later. Bob told me that the plan was to only give them to the people that attended the conference, but he said we had such overwhelming demand that they may have to open that up, but it wouldn't be until the Christmas season. So look forward to that at the end of November or early December and see if they have those shirts available for you to buy as well. I am excited. I've got mine ordered. They're on back order, so hopefully I will be receiving them soon. I bought one that says soon on the front of it, and it's a sweatshirt hoodie. And then I bought the loaves and fishes in the Hebrew letters. So I guess that would be right to left. And let's see. So after I got settled in, it was late at night. It was about 1:45, and I kept thinking, I'm a late night person. I thought I really want to go get something to eat or drink, but I'm not really hungry. And I was reading this book, and I'm like, I really don't want to give up reading this book, but I feel like I need to go downstairs for some reason. And I kept trying to read. I'm like, I just can't do it. I feel like God's telling me I need to go downstairs. I'm like, whatever, I guess I'm going to go. So I go down into the little shop area where they have Starbucks in the morning. And I go to grab a pop, and I see there's two guys walking around, walking with each other. And I looked at one of them and I thought, is that Thaddeus? Kind of looks like him. And I was looking at the other guy and I'm like, maybe that's John the Baptist, but I'm not sure. You know, he didn't have the crazy hair and the clothing that he wears from The Chosen, obviously. And I thought, oh, that's kind of weird. And there's really nobody around. There was 2 people sitting at one table, maybe 2 people at another table, and it's a big open area. So there wasn't anybody around, but I'm like, I don't want to bother these guys. You know, their big day comes tomorrow and Sunday when all their fans are going to be here bothering them. But I kept seeing them as I was walking around, and I went to check out same time they were. And I walked up to Thaddeus and I said, I have a stupid question to ask you, but I said, are you on The Chosen? And he goes, yes, I play Thaddeus. And I looked at the other guy and I said, and you play John the Baptist? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I am so sorry. I don't mean to bother you guys. I said, I had to know. I just had to know. I said, I assume that's who you were, but you know, you don't have on the makeup. You look a little different. And they go, oh, we get that all the time, especially John the Baptist. And I said, I'm sorry, you just look weird without your costume on. And he goes, I look weird without it on? Super nice guys. Thaddeus was talking to me, and while he was paying for their pizza, John the Baptist is over here talking to me, asking me where I'm from and what do I think of the show. He was just being, you know, just a totally nice, down-to-earth kind of guy. And I told him, I kept repeating, I'm sorry I bothered you. And I even posted my video on Instagram, and I was in tears at the end because I was just like, oh, this is why I'm here. I'm such a Chosen fan, and God has just done so much in my life because of the show. And I was so excited, and I just started crying, even trying to talk about it. Because, you know, the show, when you've been saved by Jesus and you have these experiences, you just can't help but the tears just flow, right? So that was my exciting first night. And then I'm like, okay, I just need to be listening for whenever God tells me to go do a thing. I guess I need to be ready. And I had one friend that I had just met at another conference a few months earlier. I attend a podcast conference because I have a good friend that runs that called Podcast Movement. And we met in Denver. A mutual friend introduced her to me. Her name is Betsy. And Betsy sells Chosen clothing. And I'm going to have her on my podcast in an upcoming show very soon. And she has a story to share as well. But she sells really cute clothing that she makes herself. So she's trying to help raise money so that the show can be put out in all the different languages around the world. So I got to hang out with her and her friends, which really helped because I didn't know anybody. And I literally was so scared. I remember texting my family the night before saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm not somebody that's good with being an extrovert in public. I'm great on camera and I'm great with close friends and family, but you put me out in a conference by myself and I'm terrified to the point of tears. And I was so afraid. And my sister-in-law was like, don't be that way. Get out there and get to know people. Well, a lot of the people that I noticed that they were already talking to each other is because they had met. They were extras. A lot of them have been on the Chosen series as extras, and they've already met other people. So, of course, they're just, you know, hey, how are you? And a few people are dressed up in costume, and so that also helped them stand out. So people come up, want to take their pictures and things like that. But the fact that I had Betsy and her team with me totally changed everything for me. I got to be in their group. So they have groups when they take pictures of everybody with the actors. So let me just hold off right there. I know I'm getting too far ahead. So Friday night I went to sleep. Nothing was going on Friday night. The party I saw was for AT&T. I didn't miss out on anything other than getting to buy the shirts. Saturday morning, I woke up, I grabbed some coffee, and then I headed over to the Chosen conference area. And Betsy and her friends, she had a couple that hadn't signed in the night before. So I joined them in line. And luckily, even though the line was super long, they were pretty close to the front of the line. And I really thought as many people were walking around with their badges the night before, I figured this line was only going to be a couple hundred people. Keep in mind, there was 3,500 people that attended this conference. So this was probably bigger than Podcast Movement that I usually go to. And they could use a little help in this area with ChosenCon. I'm just saying. They did great. Everything moved very fast. They didn't have to worry about printing our names on the badges, but they did have to find out if you bought meals before the conference, then you got these little tags to put on your badge as well. And silly me, I get so many emails, especially just from the Chosen. I don't read every single one of them. I miss the opportunity to get my meals paid for ahead of time so that I could eat there in the conference area. It was no big deal. I still had plenty of options to eat in the area, so that worked out okay. But the lines moved pretty quickly, and we went straight over to the main entry area and walked right into the conference expo. And immediately, Dallas and his wife were getting ready to be interviewed by another podcaster. And so she had them up on stage. People were applauding. They had another area set up where you could walk around. They had these white boats or partial boats kind of in this little, they had a quadrant. So it was shaped kind of like a T, if you can imagine, but they were walls. And each section of the walls, you could write down your chosen story, like how were you saved? I would have loved the opportunity to have met some of the people that were putting their names. And I did talk to a couple and I gave them my card. I said, I would love to interview you, but I haven't heard from anybody yet. But it would have been nice to have that opportunity to have them on my show, because those are exactly the kind of people I want to hear from. I want to be able to share these heartfelt moments of how the Chosen has helped shape your life as a Christian today. But anyway, I walked over there and I put my story up, and I will share that here in a little bit. I just put it up on the wall, and there were people that were trying to write their stories, and they were in tears, and it's a very emotional area, but it was really cool that they had that set up. And then off to the side, they had this huge mural that they had started, and it was a paint by number mural. And you walk over there and they would be like, what section do you want to paint on? And you can tell them, and they'll just bring over the paints and the paint brushes that you need for that section. And you could paint as much or as little as you wanted. I never got to see the completed painting. I think it was from when Jesus was doing the Sermon on the Mount, I think. It was like he had his hand up and he was wearing the blue sash. So I'm pretty sure that's what the scene represented, but I didn't really see how the rest of it was going to come together. And I'm hoping they show that in an upcoming live stream on the show, because I would like to see what the finished product looked like. And then around the corner from that, they had Emma's cinnamon cakes. So if you remember from season 1 or season 2, actually, I guess it was, they were always talking about her famous cinnamon cakes, or maybe that was season 3. Anyway, James and John were talking about their mom's cinnamon cakes, especially Big James. He couldn't wait to go back and get them. Well, they had those for sale, so you could buy the cinnamon cakes. And then they had the kitchen set up, which I believe was Emma's kitchen. And you could go in there and get your picture taken behind the table. And they had everybody, and they had different volunteers set up to make sure the people weren't hurting anything or whatever. And also, when you first walk into the expo, they have 2 areas set up as well, so that you can see inside of Simon's home when you walk in. And then there was another wall that had all the different costumes of all the disciples on display too. So that was kind of cool. You obviously got the feel that you're walking back in time, walking into some of this, which was neat. And so I got to be with group 1 for the photo shoot, and that was so exciting. We had to wait in line for a long time, but we finally got to get in there, and they hustle you really fast. And the really cool thing about it, first I got to talk to Daryl Eves, and I reminded him that I had an interview with him on my podcast. I'm sure he gets bombarded by thousands of people. I'm sure he can't remember everybody, but I just reminded him that, hey, I interviewed you, and we kind of talked briefly, and he asked me how the show was going. And then Julie Molina, she was on my podcast a while back. She was somebody else I interviewed from The Chosen. She used to be the administrative assistant for Dallas and Daryl. And she was the one that took our purses and whatnot and led us through person by person to get our pictures taken. And like I said, she takes all your stuff, she gets you into the spot, and then you get to have your picture taken with each actor, and they're standing in front of, chosen background or whatever. And you move from station to station, but you don't have much time. And we're trying to be like, hey, how are you? And they tell you, don't talk to the actors, there's no time for that. And we'd be like, thanks, and be doing thumbs up or silly faces or whatever. And I can't remember, I think we had about maybe 12 photos that we were able to take. We got to have our picture taken with Amanda, and I saw that later, by the time we made it over to Dallas, Amanda had been replaced by another person who works on the show, and I didn't even know her name, so I'm really glad we got to be with Amanda. And I said, I really would like to interview you on my podcast. She goes, yeah, absolutely, get in touch with me. So hopefully I can get Amanda on the show. And then we finally got up to Dallas, and they said we had more time with Dallas, and he would sign autographs and whatnot. And my friend Betsy was the first in the line, and whoever was with her, they got their pictures taken and got autographs. But the next person, the other group, still my group, they stopped it. They said, we can't do any more autographs because it's just slowing down the line. But I did get a chance to tell Dallas that I have a mutual friend, and I brought up his name. He's like, oh yeah, I know Chris and Terry. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Makes it feel like a little smaller world. So I got to get my picture taken with Dallas, and that made my day. So I got the pictures taken, but I didn't get a picture with Jonathan Rumi. He was not there for the pictures when I went through the line. I did see that later on he was there for either Saturday or Sunday's photo shoots. I mean, they were doing these pictures nonstop. Like when they finally opened it up, it was probably 10 a.m. and they did them up till about 4 p.m. because they were opening the doors to the main conference area. So all of this was just the expo hall, and then they had the main conference, and we went in there Saturday, and again, there was a long line. Everybody was waiting by those doors. Everybody wants the best seats. And if you were a VIP person, you had the roped off seats in the front where you could sit at right in front of the stage. But the rest of us, it was first come, first serve. And luckily, my friends were not messing around. They wanted to be in there. And we got in the middle part, but we were far enough back. And I did get some videos and pictures taken of that, so it wasn't too awfully bad. I wasn't way out on the wings, but the people on the wings had giant monitors to watch too, so those were also really good. So you really didn't have a bad seat, you just might not have been in front of the stars themselves when they were up talking on the stage. And to keep us entertained right after the doors opened, so they opened the doors I think at 5, and then everything started at 6. And so for that first hour, Daryl Eves came out and he was giving away prizes, so that was fun. They checked to see who was the furthest, how far they came, and it was some people from Australia. So he gave them, all of the people from Australia got the opportunity to be in season 5 as an extra. I'm sure they'll still have to buy their own plane ticket, but they've got the rights to be there. So that's a pretty cool thing. And they were very excited. And I was a little jealous because I really want to be in season 5 as well. And so anyway, I'll share some videos from what took place on Saturday night. It was really cool. They had a big screen with a circle, and it had, this fish swimming around outside, just like you see in their logo. And then they had a screen in the middle, so sometimes they would have stuff that showed up there. They had the Chosen band, so they came out and performed, even with the singer, and she performed the main song, and then they performed Trouble as well.
Chronicling the ministry of Jesus and his apostles. It's called The Chosen.
It is the #1 biggest crowdfunded project of all time.
What they've done for the series The Chosen, a remarkable, even divine undertaking.
It's getting rave reviews, and it's already been translated into 50 languages and counting.
There is a TV series that has undertaken something that would be impressive in any time. And that involves 2,000 extras. How do you get 2,000 extras together in the middle of a pandemic and safely shoot this scene? Are you going to go on one of these crazy shows where you do contests where you try to accomplish the impossible? Because that looks like this. The
Nathaniel was playing keyboards, so that was kind of cool. I'm like, hey, isn't that Nathaniel back there? And I've seen him on Instagram. I know that he plays instruments. Several of them play instruments, but he actually got to play in the band on stage. That was pretty cool, and we all applauded and were excited to see him on stage as well. So Saturday was great. We had a chance to hear from the ladies. So several of the female actresses came out on stage, and the one that probably blew me away over all of them was Tamar. Tamar is a beautiful woman. She's tall and thin and lean, and she's just beautiful inside and out. And you could tell by just how she talks to everybody. And she's got a great sense of humor. She's very comfortable on stage, and she wasn't afraid to ask questions, which I can relate to. That's what I do. I'm a type of person that's always asking questions. And she was just very forthright with her answers. And she was fairly outspoken, but in a very intelligible way and an honest way. And it wasn't like she was overtaking the stage. But it was interesting because on the show, I mean, she does kind of portray that same personality. And that's one thing I will say that I observed is as I watched all the actors on stage and listened to how they talked, I realized that these guys are very similar to how they perform the character that they're trying to be on stage or on The Chosen. And I'll give you a good example of that. Sunday, they had the men come out and all the disciples were on stage. And Andrew, he is such a character. I really enjoy listening to him. But he sat in the back, and there was a moment where he was getting kind of excited, just like how we've seen him act when he talks about John the Baptist. He kind of gets excited, and his voice kind of squeaks, and he's all, He got that way on stage. And then later he started talking about, what happened during season 4. How did it impact you? And he shared a moment there that was very personal to him, and he started tearing up on stage. And of course, all of us are tearing up listening to him because it had to do with Israel. He has family in Israel, and so he was really worried about them and concerned. And that was, you could just tell everybody was feeling shook up about it. And Dallas kind of said that. He's like, he's got family in Israel. Now, I don't know if Shahar is part of that. I know Shahar's in Israel. He was not at The Chosen, and Shahar plays Simon. So he is in Israel, and they say he's doing okay, I guess, but he wasn't there. So missing him on stage. And of course we had the new Philip that came out, and so he got to be introduced on stage. Again, I'm jumping ahead. I apologize. Let me go back to Saturday and finish telling you everything that happened that night. So we got to hear the ladies, and they were not allowed to talk about seasons 1 through 3 because of the strike that's still ongoing. So they could only talk about season 4. But of course, Dallas doesn't want them to say much about season 4 because that hasn't come out yet. So there was kind of an interesting way that they had to ask questions and talk about maybe their favorite moments or things that had happened in season 4 without actually giving away anything from season 4. So that was quite interesting to hear them try to make sure they said the right thing or didn't. And even the gal that plays Rama, she was wanting to say something about the prior season, and she's like, oh, I can't say it. She goes, I want to. She wasn't allowed to say anything. So it was like, oh, just come on, just tell us whatever it is that you're holding back. And Dallas had promised that there was going to be some extra special things that were going to happen on Sunday. And so I was really hoping, like, maybe they're going to show us episode 1 of season 4. Wouldn't that be cool if we got to see that, being the Chosen insiders? But I will let you know now. That did not happen. I kept hoping, though, because I know how Dallas loves to give really big surprises. So I was hoping for something great and wonderful like that. But that didn't quite happen. And then we also got to hear from Dallas and Amanda, and they got to share their story. And if you've been a Chosen fan for very long, I'm sure you've heard of the Red Sea moments that Dallas experienced. And he went back to the original Red Sea moment that he had when he was trying to film on a lake, and the fog set in, and they couldn't get the shots that they wanted, and they had to keep pushing it off. And his wife kept saying, this might be your Red Sea moment. She kept trying to tell him, Amanda's like, don't do this now. Don't cancel. You need to wait. Just wait. And so she went into a lot of detail about why that happened. And it's really reassuring. I mean, she's going back to something that she felt like God was telling her, and she kept trying to encourage Dallas. And right at that moment when Dallas was like, okay, we're done, we're not going to get this shot, somebody goes, hey, look, the fog's lifting. And they turn around and the fog's clearing out, and then they end up getting some of the best shots. It's because they waited. They got the best shots. So I love the Red Sea moments, and I think they probably have one almost in every season.
Taking credit for something, and you start thinking, you have something to do with the blessing that God is pouring out, but He just won't let us get to that point because of Red Sea moments. So there's just been these times where we had to have something or we couldn't go forward. And that's where God intervenes, right? When there's just nothing else for you to do but like camp and wait. And so it's not like I live walking around and going, God said, God did the thing, I mean, these are like special moments. But I think when you're in the Word and you're kind of following His leading, and then these moments happen, you're like, oh, dude, like He's prepped us for this. This is what this is. So that's how I think it's just the Bible. You know, it's the Bible equips us, the Bible trains us, and the Bible stays us.
And that was really cool. But then they also shared kind of their love story and how they came together. And the one thing we got to learn about Amanda and Dallas is that Amanda and her friends referred to Dallas as Superman. So they kept putting their arms out and acted like they were flying. So like if Amanda's friends saw Dallas walking by, they'd be like, Superman, you know. But Dallas had a girlfriend when they first met. And so even though she was like, oh yeah, he's kind of cute, she was also like, I'm not going there. He's got a girlfriend. And he ended up having a roommate that went out with Amanda, and he liked Amanda, knew that she's a pretty cool person. And long story short, he and his girlfriend eventually broke up, and then he and Amanda got together, and the rest is history. So now they have this beautiful family, and they've created the show together, and she's obviously a large part of the show with Dallas, and that's pretty exciting because you hear her talking about how she helped pick the different actors that they got on the show, and she's offered advice for different things, and plus she helps write all of the Bible study books that they have as well. So it was pretty cool. Amanda just seems so down to earth, and I can't wait to interview her and have her talk about her experiences being part of The Chosen and just living a life with Dallas. You know, what's that like? Dating or being married to a TV producer. I was gonna say movie producer. I know he's done some movies as well, but this is obviously his bread and butter now, is The Chosen. Saturday night was a lot of fun. I had a great time being there. And I forgot to mention, one of the things that was pretty cool also was while we were waiting for that 6 p.m. time to finally hit, the lights go dark. And all of a sudden we hear a lot of cheering, and I turn around, and about 5 rows behind me, here comes all the actors, and they all walk in, and we're all standing up and cheering for them, and they're walking by, and it was just kind of a cool moment. Of course, they're all, like I said, they're dressed like you and I, just normal clothing. And there was one tall blonde woman that she had really short hair. She's tall. I'm like, who is that? And later on, I found out that she is the one that plays the blind woman that got healed in season 3, Shula. So you remember in season 3 when Shula and Barnaby are standing there together, and Barnaby's kind of like, hey, you know, can he heal her? He's talking to Jesus, and then he covers Shula's eyes, and then she can see. And it's just one of those things, you don't realize how tall she is, and you don't expect her to have short blonde hair because she's obviously dressed up with all of her costume on. But that was kind of cool, just to try to guess who all these actors were. And one of the people that got a lot of attention was the character Atticus. People love Atticus. They really raved over him. And also when they brought the disciples up on stage, of course, Matthew got tons of applause, and of course, Jesus got a ton of applause as well. But I thought that was interesting to see like who was getting the most attention. But Atticus is definitely one of them that people really like. So that's pretty cool. Sunday morning was going to start off with Matt Maher, and he was going to do worship service, and then they were going to have an actual church service. I assumed that everybody was going to be standing in line. I probably had to be there at 7 a.m., but I was tired, and it was a long day, and I wanted to sleep in. So I decided to get there at 8:15. The service didn't start until 9. And I think I got down to 8:15 and 8:30 actually. And I went, sat down, and I was in the middle section, and the main aisleway was right in front of me. And then there was all the reserved seats in front of that. So I was in the front row of the seats I could be in, and I was like 3 seats away from the middle. So I was like front and center. I had really good seats, and you'll see that some of the videos of how close I really was to the stage. And I was not going to move from that seat the rest of the day. I had an extra seat next to me, and I got to meet lots of people around me. Of course, everybody wants to share their stories and where they're from, and, you know, different things. So everybody was very, I would say 99% of the people at ChosenCon were very friendly. There were a few, especially when it comes to those seats, they're not always the nicest people. And I'm like, what happened to good Christian behavior here, people? But most of the part, everybody was so friendly, and I got a chance to meet so many people, including while I was in line on Saturday waiting to get my picture taken with everybody. I met a woman who works for Compassion International, and if you're familiar with that company, they give it's a way to donate money to children in other countries to help them out. And I happen to be somebody that was using that service through my church. We'd signed up through Compassion International. So it was pretty cool because I got to learn a lot more about that company just by standing in line and having conversations with people. So on Sunday, I sat down, I had these great seats. I'm so excited because I love Matt Maher and I would love to go see him in concert. And when he came out on stage, he started with a quick hymn and then he performed some of his songs. And I was concerned because I know some of his songs can really get the tears flowing on me. And I'm like, I don't want to be that person right now. He didn't perform those, thank goodness, but he still performed others. He performed for about 30 minutes and it was just so good to be part of that and just get to sing with them and just belt my heart out. And more people came in at 9 o'clock to actually attend the church service, but it didn't really start filling up until people knew that they wanted to be there for the opening of the Chosen Conference, which was too bad because the church service was really good. Now, I'm sure a lot of people might have been Catholic, so they'd probably been looking for a Catholic church to go to. But the people that did stay, they got fed. Let's just put it that way. The pastor that came in, he spoke about one of the episodes. It was the one with Jairus and the bleeding woman, and he obviously talked about I think it was Mark chapter 5, and so he brought back different parts of scripture while he shared that part of the Chosen, and that was very interesting. And I got a lot out of that, and I was so happy to be part of that and to hear his message. I love the pastor at my church, and I'm so happy to be part of that. But it is interesting to hear how different pastors bring things together, and it just hits you right where you need to be hit, like it stirs something up inside of you and you're like, oh, I need to work on this thing. And I don't know, it was really good. I really enjoyed. So I had great worship music and then had the great service, and then we went on with the rest of the conference.
I believe in the sun. I believe in the risen one. I believe I overcome by the power of his blood. Amen. Amen. I'm alive because he lives. Amen. Amen. Let my soul join the Lord and never because he on a tree, screaming out, so that I could say you've not forsaken me. You're the first and the last, my future and my past, who I was, who I will forever be. You are
Reach out for me in your anger. Reach out for me in your pain. God says that to you today. As you're going, why is this all happening? He says, don't be afraid. Don't give in to your sinking fear. Touch me. Touch the edge of my garment. Reach for my heart. Touch me. And what did Jairus do? Jairus brought Jesus into his home. Jairus, in this moment, brought Jesus into his home. He was humiliated and made to wait. He was disappointed and pushed to the end of the line, while Jesus dealt with someone who was less important, culturally speaking, than he was. Then he was made to watch as Jesus embraced being ceremonially defiled, upending everything that Jairus ever thought he knew about how the world should work. But then when Jesus gave him those words that he speaks to you today, don't be afraid, just believe. What did Jairus do? Jairus, grieving and in shock, sitting in raw, hot disappointment, brought Jesus into his home anyway. And this to me is the climactic, victorious, triumphant moment of the story, not when Neely actually sits up in the bed.
Mm-hmm. So this was the day they brought out all the disciples. And as I said earlier, there was so much excitement around Jesus when he walks out on stage. Everybody goes crazy. And then he went around, Dallas introduced all the different characters. And of course, when they got to Patel, Matthew, everybody was screaming. And everybody I knew loves Mark. I mean, it's like one of their favorite characters is Matthew. And again, as I mentioned, how sometimes they seem so much like their characters. There was a moment with Matthew that was pretty funny. He was on the back row, and they were towards the end of their session while they were up on stage, and the question that they were going around was asking, and finally gets to Matthew, and he's like, can you repeat what the question was? He was totally lost. There had been so much conversation and humor and stuff, he couldn't remember. And then afterwards, he's kind of like, I just had to pee really bad. I drank this water. So the audience is cracking up, but the way he delivers it, it's kind of like his character on the show is so deadpan, like he doesn't realize he's telling a joke, and it's so funny. And the actor who plays Judas, oh my gosh, again, totally funny. There are some clips, I got one of them recorded. There was another one that I missed. I wish I would have recorded it, because oh gosh, he's just so quick-witted. You know, he was sitting right next to Jesus, which I thought was interesting. Let's put Judas right next to Jesus. And, you know, Jonathan says something, and Judas just, boom, just right back. And it was just really funny. And even Jonathan's like, yeah, you got me on that one. You know? And they just seem to have such a brotherhood when they're up there on stage. They had a great time talking to each other. And you just felt like you were privileged to be sitting in their home listening to these guys carry on. It was a lot of fun. And they're kind of like little kids up there on stage, too. So I'll share some clips of that so you can see what their sense of humor was like, and hopefully you'll see that they're just as funny as I try to describe that they are.
So where you are now, what's the difference? Your career, your relationships, how have you grown?
Well, I can pay my rent now.
I'd say that the amount of interest that I had on even the historical context of what was happening in Judea at the time, I had no idea. Like not the slightest clue. And you sort of look at the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, without understanding that there was an actual group of humans who are also living their day-to-day life there. And I don't know, man, those sort of things can just be so easily missed because you're looking for a scripture that resonates with you right now versus what was actually resonating with them then.
I legit thought I was playing John the Baptist at the beginning. So yeah, mimicking what Abe said, like you get this whole new understanding for these people, an historical understanding, but also for all of us, you get an emotional, you get a real insight into the person. And for a lot of us, I don't know, I think it does happen for a lot of us. You have an emotional connection. There's so much of John that is in me. I'm sure we all have a bit of thunder in us.
Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody.
I love how we're flanking everyone here, right? Sons of Thunder, just
on the left and right.
When you offered it to me, because I never even heard of that. I was like, I don't think scripturally you could do that, man. But when I met Giovanni, he was like, I'm playing Thaddeus. I'm like, who?
But seriously though, I think as an artist you want to be part of something way bigger than yourself, and it's enriched my relationships in ways I never thought was possible. And I always wanted to be a part of a family that I felt that, and I wanted my faith to grow stronger, and I think those two merging together wasn't a coincidence, so just really blessed to be here.
The friendships that we've made within the cast and crew has been the biggest area that I think it's changed my life, because throughout my whole life I never felt a sense of belonging, and I was always looking for my community and my people, and it's changed my life in way more ways than just that, but that's finding my people has been the biggest one.
Work with. I mean, whenever you get onto a show or work with a cast, you're hoping that everyone is chill enough to be around and hang out with and joke around. And I don't think there's ever been a single moment with anybody here where we haven't either hung out with each other or been able to connect on something or been there for one another or even just respect one another enough to know that, hey, this person needs their moment or something like that and have their back. So it's gonna be sad at season 7 once that's not happening all the time.
We're not there yet. I know. We're not there. Help but laugh and just have a good time when you're around these guys. And so you ask how it's changed our life, and that's always the first thing that comes to my mind is the camaraderie and the group of friends that I've gained along the way.
A lot has changed since then. In fact, in the years between then and the beginning of the show, were not easy years for either one of us in our careers. But yeah, talk about what's different now than from even back 10 years ago. Because I feel like even in our faith, even in your faith, it's been a big difference.
Yeah, I think my faith, just on that point alone, my faith has deepened exponentially. On a practical level, I can wear shoes without holes in them. So that's a really good feeling.
You know, there are so many people that are touched by this show, and for us, there's almost nothing better as an artist than to be a part of something that can lift someone up in one of the darkest times of their life.
Started was a parent that messaged me and says, I now understand my child because of you in this portrayal of Matthew. And at first I was like, whoa, I'm an adult, I'm not a child, but okay. But after reflecting and getting Paris out of that, I realized this storyline and journey of Matthew has given a lot of parents and kids communication and understanding of one another. This parent shared with me that their child was just watching the show, and whenever Matthew would come up, they would say, oh, he's just like me. And I don't think they had, you know, they noticed behavioral or communication issues with their child, and then it clicked with them when they saw Matthew in this portrayal.
To go back to that whole like getting John thing, when I got John, I'm like, oh, I want the Roman one. Who's John? Like I didn't know. How did you not know who John was? I didn't know. But I was just like, when Dad was like, oh, book Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I'm like, oh, John, yeah. Jordan, thank you for John. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, so I auditioned for The Shepherd, the short film that led to The Chosen a year and a half before The Chosen, and I think it really is the best job I didn't get. Because if I had gotten that, I would never have been here, I wouldn't have met all of you, and this has completely changed my life. So, thank you for not casting me in that, and then casting me in this.
I'll keep this brief. I auditioned for the one and only Matthew.
He's like, I just hit home runs. He's like, I don't know what you all are struggling with. I come in, I nail my audition, I get the part. That's it. Compared to previous seasons for the character of Jesus, this was for sure the heaviest one so far. But talk about difference in the character that you're playing and also for you in prepping for it.
Well, there was like 10,000% more dialogue this season. A lot of words, people. A lot of words.
Not sorry.
There's a but they're impactful words. There are words that changed an entire generation and in fact an entire world from that point 2,000 years ago to today. And so I'm glad Dallas is not sorry, because now you get to hear what we're bringing to life from that book that changed the world. And these people that changed the world, they changed their own existence and they changed all of us today, especially in the Western world. I think, for me, seeing Jesus take on different colors this season, and I don't mean his clothes, not specifically his clothes. Let's just be clear about those colors. But elements of humanity that I think we haven't quite seen yet in the flesh, and it becomes electric. Season 4 for me is just electric. And I think you guys are going to be pretty knocked out when you see what's coming for season 4.
But Reza, why don't you just share quickly, what's it like coming in at the halfway point here? There's a rhythm that's already been established. Obviously, everyone knows each other. And so it's very, very difficult to come in, fill someone else's shoes, but also to just fit in. It's a big group and it's a close-knit group. How was that for you? Were they nice to you, and why not?
Tell the truth, Reza. Tell the truth.
Don't talk about the hazing.
I mean, obviously the scene between me, Jordan, and Jonathan, I really enjoyed doing that. I know a lot of you have seen that as well on the live stream, but just in general, I mean, each season, like, you know, when we first started this journey, it was like getting the band together, and now each season we get more closer, it gets more emotional, it gets more real on and off set, and I think what you were saying, Jonathan, is just the intensity and how electric and emotional this season is. It's like we've cried together, we've laughed together, we've been there for each other at our hardest moments and at our biggest wins, both for the cast and crew, and I feel like we keep getting closer each and every season. You're going to see that this season as well.
For sure.
And then there was the bad boys got to come out on stage. So we got to see Atticus and Gaius and Quintus and Shmuel. And again, these guys are just amazing and so super funny. And somebody brought up a comment, like, every time they see him, like, what's one thing that stands out about Atticus? It's like, he's always eating. And then somebody actually from the audience threw an apple up to him on stage, and he bit into it up on stage, and he responds or whatever. They're just hysterical.
Okay, you ready? Would you rather be able to speak to animals or speak every language in the world? I need to know. This will show me your heart. Say the wrong, I can't even look them in the eye. Please don't pick the wrong thing on this stage because I might leave. I don't want to leave. Sean, start, y'all.
I have a feeling the right answer is speak to animals. To Jesus is all the audience needs to know to think poorly of me. And actually, the better I am, the more effective I am, the more of a threat you feel to God, the more of a threat you feel to Jesus. Because when we have confirmation bias about something, we will see whatever we want to see, no matter what happens. And Shmuel could literally walk an old lady across the street, and they would say he's only doing it to try to win people over to his wrong point of view. And so I think there's a real lesson, and I really love what I think Pastor Huffman said yesterday, that we today are the Pharisees. Because we are the most in danger of being hypocritical when God comes. And so I like to think that my character stands in for all of us who at some point have trouble adapting to something new and breaking out of something we were raised to believe. And so, anybody in here ever been wrong before? Are you a villain?
I'm sorry. We're just gonna call a spade. Or Uno card.
Now wait a minute here. Who are we talking about?
If you could read every mind in the room, you would know it was you. It was you. Everybody can't stand you when I see you on the screen. I'm upset. I'm so upset. They don't like what you do, but I love the way you act. understand you. How do you do that?
I think, what couldn't Heather stand? And then I do that.
Perfect.
You know, sort of everything that Sean said, first of all, in terms of like being a villain, right? Like, you know, Quintus is perpetuating the system that he's a product of. And I think that there's a lesson there, right? Because we're all a product of the system and sometimes perpetuate things that are villainous that we're not aware of, right? So hopefully, me infuriating you, right, can give that perspective a little bit. But in terms of actually playing him, it's, I think, it's super fun. Because Quintus is always keeping people back-footed. He's always keeping people off balance. That's the source of his power. So when he says something particularly vile, it's really helpful to have a little bit of a smile in there, right? A little bit of charm, a little bit of joy, a little bit of honey to counteract the vinegar, right? So that people don't know where the next thing is coming from. And I try to do that with every single person that I act with.
That honey, that he said he give you a little honey with his villainy.
No.
There's no honey.
Saccharin.
Oh boy.
You're brilliant too, by the way. As soon as you come in the scene, it's like you don't even know what's going on. I don't know what that is. He's always eating. Oh my gosh! No way!
It's a little grainy, but I appreciate the thought. And it's good timing because when I get a little nervous, I like to eat. These guys up here make me nervous. Heather makes me the most nervous. You know, I've been thinking about this as we are representing villainy on The Chosen. And I was reminded, you know, of what villainy is when we refer to villains or someone who's villainous or villainy itself. And I think you have to go and look at intent and action, right? So when I think about a villain, what comes to mind is someone who is intending, has malintent, someone who is intending to do harm, right? Deliberately, purposefully. And so, I mean, I wouldn't characterize any of us as villains. There certainly are villains in the world, and there is certainly some bad behavior, sometimes inappropriate behavior. But it feels like with all of us, I won't speak for all of us, but I know for myself, when you're taking on any character, any role, you can't judge that character. Otherwise, that prevents you from really inhabiting the character and bringing him or her to life, you know, with flesh and blood and their own motivations and desires and humanity, right? So I think what's fun about this, first of all, I came onto a show, these guys were all already on it, and I tell you what, they set a bar. You really are only as good as the people you work with, right? They set it high. They set it high, so it's like, you know, they talk about playing tennis. If you play with someone better than yourself, you're going to get better. So I feel like I've become a better actor just being, you know, on the screen with these guys.
I cannot even describe what it was like to watch how these people interact with each other, all the different characters, how they interact with Dallas and Daryl and each other and with us. And a lot of these actors were so humble. I don't think any of them that I saw were pretentious or snobs or anything. They didn't come across. I know podcasters, people like me who just happen to have a lot of followers, but these people in podcast world sometimes act like they're way up there in the clouds and you're way beneath them. Well, I can tell you, these guys do not act that way. They were so humble. They were so happy that we were there. They said that we helped fill them up. They said they needed this. They needed to see the reactions and see how much the show means to us. That was important to them. And I was glad that they shared that. You know, they were really putting themselves to a human level. They weren't trying to be this outstanding actor that we see on screen. They were just letting us know this is what it's like for us and why we need you guys as much as we feel like we need that show. They had plenty of question and answers during a lot of sessions, but obviously they didn't let us do question and answers with any of the actors, unfortunately. That would have been pretty cool. But most of that was all handled by whoever was running that particular session at the conference. One thing that was really interesting was the Come and See Foundation was there, and they were talking about how many languages are trying to get this show translated into. And what stood out to me the most from this was they were showing a clip from season 1 when Tamar lowers her paralyzed friend down through the roof. And so the scene with Jesus was first in the room talking to the disciples, all the way to like when he's lowered and telling him to leave, and all those different people that are talking. And they would play just a part of it. They just played it straight through like it was one show, but they, like 1 minute they would play what it sounded like in Portuguese in Brazil, and then they might play Portuguese from Portugal, and then they would have Spanish, and then they would have German, and then they had French. So they had these different voices playing these different parts, so that way it's not only translated those languages, but it's dubbed in those other languages. And the interesting part was some of those voices, when I heard them, I'm like, that sounds like Jonathan Rumi playing Jesus. Did he learn another language to do this? And what I found out was that the person that they hired to help them find all the voices to do all the dubbing is the same person who used to find the voices to find Mickey and Minnie on Disney. So he's really attuned to how can I get that actor's voice that I need it to sound like the original voice, because it's important to The Chosen to make sure that people that watch us in their own language, that it comes across as sincere and as heartfelt as how we hear it in English. So they're really focused on this has got to be just as believable, and it's got to have those good voices and everything. So it's really interesting how they pulled all that together. And they're trying to get it translated in 50 languages this year, with their final goal being 600 languages, which will cover, I think they said, about 90 or 95% of the world if they can get 600 languages, which is obviously what we're trying to do, right? We want to make sure everybody can see the show and it brings it to life for them. And then they talked about how important it is to be translated in different languages, because the #1 show, believe it or not, that's been shown around the world is Baywatch. And of course, everybody says, well, that's just because of the bikinis and, the beach scenes. I said, no, it's because it's been translated in enough languages that people wanted to watch it, because it's a show that they could hear in their own language. And so that's one reason why it was so important to the Come and See Foundation to make sure that everybody can see it around the world. And by the time they get done with this will be the #1 show that will take over all these languages. So it's pretty exciting to see where they're leading. And I can't wait to hear the next languages they come out with, because the quality is so amazing. Now, granted, I'm not going to know those languages, but when you hear somebody from one of those countries, like there was a German woman who was in her 50s, she was an anchor woman for like a national show that they do in Germany, kind of like somebody, Diane Sawyer, over here in our country. And somebody that was high up and who didn't know who Jesus was, didn't know who God was until she was in her 50s. And it was because of The Chosen that helped her finally understand who Jesus was, to build a relationship with him, kind of like me. That's kind of how I was too. Watching The Chosen helped me understand I needed to have a relationship with Jesus. So that was very interesting to see how that impacted her life. And it wasn't that The Chosen started that process, but The Chosen's kind of what got her to that point. So it's very cool. Those stories were really interesting to me. And that's kind of how they broke down Sunday. So they would have like the actors come out, and then they'd have something like that. And they'd have another set of actors come out, and then they would have the producers come out and talk about the show. And the producers talked about the actors. They talked about, there was the writers that came out and talked about their part in it. It was all very interesting. I mean, I don't normally watch everything I see that comes out on the Chosen app, and I have all those behind the scenes. They even had the round table. The rabbi, the priest, the evangelical, they all came out and were talking to Dallas. So just like you would see on the Chosen app, they were there, and people were asking them questions. And so that stuff was very interesting. And the whole weekend was just informative. It was fun. It was lighthearted. Lots of laughter, lots of worship, and just happy moments, just getting to meet other people around me and hearing their stories. It was very fulfilling, to be honest. And It would have been cool if we could have had more time to actually get to meet some of the actors, but obviously when you got 3,500 people there, how are you going to make that happen? And they're talking about doing another one, and I've heard Dallas do a live in the past that says he might want to have 10,000 people there. Like, that's a lot of people. 3,500 was a lot of people for this one. So I can't imagine being in a group of 10,000 people and even expecting to have pictures taken with some of the actors. So I'm very, very thankful and blessed that I got to be there to be part of this first ever ChosenCon, the Chosen Insiders Conference. It was so fun. And let me just kind of tell you a little bit of things that I loved and things I didn't like so much. So things that I liked or loved. The second day, I had those amazing seats and I didn't want to lose them. So my friend and I took turns leaving to go to the bathroom or grabbing food to eat. I even had a chance to see my brother who came up from Mexico. His son was having a procedure done there in Texas. And I got to see, I didn't even know he was in Dallas that day. So we met, had a quick lunch. There was a barbecue place right around the corner. So we got to eat there and talk for about an hour. And even though he's heard me talk about The Chosen a lot, he didn't understand how The Chosen was taking place back in the old days, you know, like when Jesus walked the earth. He thought it was based on something modern and today. I was like, no, this is like the real deal. It's like the Bible coming to life. So he's excited to go show it to his family. I said, you need to watch it with your kids because they're going to get a lot out of it as well. So I'm excited to hear when I find out from my brother when they started watching The Chosen. So I know they're going to love it. I loved hearing from all the actors, as I mentioned before. I got to know more about their personalities and why they, like Tamar, why did she get to stay on the show? Well, because she was a great actress and they just knew they needed to create a part for her. She just fit in so well with them. So that was awesome. And then they did the Family Feud game, F-A-N-L-Y. And that was so funny. So it was a few fans on one side of the stage, and then they had the actors on the other side. And the actors were talking smack talk and telling them they're gonna go down. And then they have the people trying to run the actual game, and they weren't keeping score. So that made it pretty funny. And then there was things that they forgot to do. And then they would give the points to the actors. And the whole audience is like, no, you can't give the point to the actors for that. They were totally wrong. So it was really funny and a lot of good laughter. So I enjoyed that a lot.
Do you want to give to them?
Get used to it!
Dear body's ready. Luke, do you have a message for them?
I have no idea this is how this is all gonna go down.
Yeah, no, I have a message for the other team. Sometimes you gotta stir up the water. So, I'll be having fun stirring up a water of your tears after you lose. Eskidoosh.
What is your message for them? Your sincere, sweet message.
Truly, I mean, I know my two castmates have, riled it up a little bit, but I just want to truly say, get used to different. Get used to losing!
I thought Thaddeus was the meek.
For you guys, but I don't think of you at all.
That's good. It's all right.
The high ground.
What about you, Yaz? This queen, tell us your message.
My message to y'all is, y'all are about to meet the Lord.
Before we get started, I just wanted to add that you guys beating us would be a bigger miracle than little James getting healed.
The things I didn't like were the long lines. That's the one place I feel like they could really use some help in trying to administer that. I think that if they would have done a longer pre-registration day on Friday and maybe had some sort of social event, and then also have a lot more merchandise for next time to handle all of that, or if they just have a way for everybody to go online and just purchase, like, okay, here's the shirts, but you can go online and purchase it, scan the code right here and buy it, which is what they did. But the app, of course, was bringing up just a website, and it wasn't very mobile friendly, and so eventually that was kind of a pain. I went back to my laptop when I got back to my room and went to that. So those are just some nuisance things, you know, that I had to deal with, but obviously nothing major. And it was also very crowded to get around. I didn't want to cut anybody off, and sometimes I felt like we were kind of doing that. I'm following my friends, and these people are all standing in a line over here, but for whatever reason, people were just stopped looking at all the displays, and other people didn't realize they could have just gone around and gone into this giant expo hall. So there was a backed up line for no reason. My friends were like, you just gotta act like you know what you're doing, and they just walked on through, and a couple of us were like, I don't know about that. Are we doing the right thing here? But luckily, I think it all worked out. So that worked out really good. So before my phone decides to die on me doing this video and I'm not having my phone charged all the way, let me continue with just a few things what's coming up with The Chosen. I promised that there were some things about season 4, 5, and 6. I wanted to be able to tell you that. If you haven't noticed, they've already got the trailer out for season 4. That came out the week right after I came back from ChosenCon, so everybody could see that. And of course, we got to see that one. We also got to see another trailer for season 4 that's going to be coming out in a couple months. Probably comes out in December or January. Another really good trailer. And you can just tell through some of these videos, and I can't say that they confirmed or denied any of this, but it pretty much looks like there's going to be things happening with John the Baptist, things happening with Lazarus, things that are just going to be very tough for Jesus to deal with. And he's going to be, looks like, shedding some tears according to the trailer that I saw. And it just looks very emotional. And they said, again, every year they say it's the hardest season they've done, but they said this one was definitely the hardest season they've done. So I believe it's going to keep getting harder for them because they're leading up to Holy Week and the crucifixion. So I really believe it's going to get harder for them. Speaking of which, they talked about season 6, and the question came up as to what are they going to film in season 6? And they said, look guys, we're not going to go to the gore. We know that everybody's worried about that. That's not our intention. Nobody wants to see the gore. Now, obviously, they have to be able to tell the story about what happened to Jesus, and they have a lot of characters to involve in that story. All the disciples are going to be there, Mother Mary, and all the women that are following. There's a lot of people to pull into that story, and I'm sure there will be some clips that they will also share of Jesus and what he's going through. So I'm sure there'll be lots of things we'll get to see leading up to season 6, and season 5 is going to be the Holy Week, so we'll get to see about that as well. And then for later in December, there's a new video that just came out last week, which is all about the Chosen Christmas special called Holy Night. And this is when they're going to take the first episode of The Shepherd and blend it with the most recent Christmas show called The Messengers. Dallas alluded to the fact that they have enough story now that they can fill in the gaps and bring these two shows together. And then they're going to be bringing back several of singers that you saw in the prior episodes. You'll see Brandon Lake and Matt Maher, Zach Williams, One Voice Children's Choir, Joy to the World, and the Bonner Family. So they'll all be performing as they merge these two stories together, which I'm really curious to see what they're going to put in there, like what's missing that we're going to put in there. Is there going to be more talked about Jesus after he died? Is there going to be more talked about as a child? I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how they do that. But that's coming out in December. It's going to be in the movie theaters, so you can buy a ticket for that. And they're also going to have season 4 is going to be out in the movie theaters in February. So they're going to have the first 3 episodes that'll come out on February 1st. And then they're going to have episodes 4 through 6 on February 16th. And then episodes 7 and 8 on February 29th. And as always, you'll be able to find all the free episodes in the app. Probably March. Dallas hasn't exactly said yet when that's going to be, but I'm sure they'll probably start coming out in March so you can see them if you don't want to go to the movie theater. But the movie theater helps them keep the show going, and just more ways for them to raise money and to get it into people around the world. And finally, there was one more thing they showed us was Jonathan has a new series called Jonathan and Jesus. And I guess if you were an extra on season 4, you got to see the first episode of this. It's a 4-part series. He made a comment that they want to be able to show this to keep people in between seasons. So I don't know if this is something that's coming out in between season 4 and season 5 or when it's going to be aired. But it looks like it's the struggles and what Jonathan Rumi deals with playing that part, and things that he didn't want to have happen have kind of started to happen. You know, people were running to him in this trailer that we saw, like, oh, it's Jesus, and people were running over to him and just screaming, and you know, he's like, I'm not Jesus. I'm an actor. And I'm really curious to see what that show is going to be like. So look forward to that coming out in some soonish time. That famous word, soon. So that's about all I have for the ChosenCon. There was a lot of information. I know I talked really fast trying to get through all of this, and I'm still going to try to show some clips. So I hope that you find this enjoyable and entertaining, and I hope the distractions of people driving behind me weren't too distracting if you're watching this on video. And if you are watching on video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe so I can help grow the channel on YouTube as well. I would like to start bringing in more video aspects, and it's something that I'm working on as I learn this craft a little bit better, and I'm going to keep improving. I'm trying to add new things and effects, and I still want to keep my audio quality really great because I have people like you who also like to listen. And I want to give a special shout out to Mark Clemens from my hometown. Apparently Mark blessed me by talking to my brother about the fact that he listens to the show, and I'm sure it must have come across from Facebook. I don't know Mark personally, but he saw my show or heard my show and was talking to my brother about it, and he's like, yeah, I love reading the Bible, and is that your daughter that does that Chosen podcast? And my brother was like, my daughter? He goes, no, my sister I think has one. And he goes, well, yeah, I listened to her podcast. So Mark, thank you so much for listening. It was really exciting when I got that news, and I had to have a chance to shout your name out here on the podcast. And if you would ever like to reach out, anybody, if you want to send me an email, you can reach me at shay@walkingwiththechosen.com. Shay is spelled SHEY. I would love to interview you if you want to share your story of how the Chosen has impacted your life. And if you just want to share a prayer request, I would love to take those in as well. I've had a few people reach out to me and ask for me to pray for them, and I'd be happy to do so. I am learning so much more about God because of doing this podcast. I really feel like it's something He wants me to do, and I'm striving to try to get to a weekly basis, and I promise you guys I'm trying. I appreciate you listening. I'm sorry that these have been hit and miss. I'm just trying my best to figure out how to work it into a busy schedule. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to do this here on my lake. We have beautiful weather today. There's a light breeze, and I'm just hoping the sound quality wasn't too bad with my headset. We've had weed eaters, and we've had leaf blowers and weed eaters and boats and squeaky docks and the wind. So I'm sure it's made it a lot more interesting to you to have to hear all these sounds, but I really do appreciate you staying to the end and listening to all this. And if there's anything you think that might make the show even more enjoyable for you to consider listening, please share that with me. You can also find me on Instagram at Walking with the Chosen podcast, and you can find me on Facebook, Walking with the Chosen. Join the group, share your stories. I'm not really big on doing a lot with social media. It's something I need to work on, but the main thing for me is just to get these episodes out and to get the show out to as many people as possible, so that maybe somebody will be like, oh, the Chosen, what's that about? And it'll pique their curiosity enough so they'll go check out the show, and maybe it'll save their life like it did for me. Well, that's all for now. Thank you so much for being here, and have a great time until the next time I get to talk to you on Walking with the Chosen.
We tried. Superman doesn't need a fan.